A cat doesn't analyze its worldview, it simply sees what it sees and knows what it knows, with unshakable conviction. Unknown. Watch a cat encounter a mirror for the first time. Some see another cat, others recognize themselves, while still others seem gloriously untroubled by the philosophical implications of reflection. This variety of responses reveals something fascinating about mindset and cognition, how our mental frameworks shape not just what we think, but what we're capable of perceiving and understanding. Like a cat's whiskers that create an invisible map of spatial relationships, our mindsets form unseen frameworks through which we interpret and navigate reality. These mental structures are both more flexible and more persistent than we might imagine, capable of dramatic shifts yet often remarkably resistant to change. Consider Alexandra, a scientist who found her rigidly analytical mindset both an asset and a limitation in her research. I was trained to think in linear cause and effect relationships, she shares. It wasn't until I allowed myself to embrace more intuitive and systemic thinking that I made my biggest breakthroughs. The irony was that becoming less purely analytical actually made me a better scientist. The landscape of cognition. Our cognitive processes resemble a cat's territory, filled with familiar paths we traverse automatically, hidden spots we rarely explore, and boundaries we might not even recognize. Understanding this mental landscape helps us navigate it more consciously. David, a psychologist specializing in cognitive development, describes it this way. David, think of your mind as a vast city. There are highways of habitual thought you travel daily, back alleys of half-forgotten memories, and whole districts you might never visit unless you consciously choose to explore them. The quality of your life largely depends on how you navigate this internal geography. The patterns of thought. Just as a cat's graceful movements follow invisible patterns of muscular coordination, our thoughts flow through well-worn neural pathways. These patterns can either lift us toward growth or lock us in limiting cycles. The good news is that with gentle awareness and consistent practice, we can reshape these mental patterns. Rachel's story beautifully illustrates this possibility for change. After years of struggling with perfectionism that made her creative work nearly impossible, she discovered something profound. Rachel, I realized my thoughts weren't facts, they were habits. Once I understood this, I could begin to question the voice that always said, "Not good enough," and nurture a kinder inner dialogue. Think of how a cat approaches a new challenge. There's no internal narrative about past failures or future disasters, just present-moment engagement with what's possible. This natural orientation toward growth and possibility is available to us as well, though we often need to cultivate it consciously. Michael, a middle school teacher, transformed his classroom by introducing what he calls possibility thinking to his students. Michael, when a child says, "I can't do math," we add one simple word, "yet." This tiny shift from fixed to growth mindset changes everything. I've watched students move from defeat to determination simply by understanding that their abilities aren't set in stone. Breaking free from mental cages. Sometimes our thoughts can feel like invisible bars, constraining our movements and limiting our possibilities. Lisa, a former anxiety sufferer, describes her breakthrough. Lisa, I used to live in a cage built of what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Learning to recognize these thoughts as constructions rather than reality was my first step toward freedom. Now when anxious thoughts arise, I can see them as clouds passing through the sky of my mind rather than prison walls. Gentle pathways to mental freedom. The journey of transforming our mindset is much like earning a cat's trust. It requires patience, consistency, and deep respect for the natural rhythm of change. Let me share some compassionate approaches that have helped many people create lasting shifts in their thinking patterns. The practice of thought recognition. Begin by simply noticing your thoughts with the same gentle curiosity a cat might show toward a floating leaf. Sarah, a busy executive who struggled with overwhelming stress, found this approach transformative. Sarah: instead of trying to force my mind to be different, I started just listening to my thoughts like they were radio stations playing in the background. This simple act of noticing without judging began to change everything. Try this gentle awareness practice. Find a quiet moment in your day, close your eyes and take 3 soft breaths. Notice what thoughts arise as if watching clouds in the sky. Label them softly. Planning thought, worried thought, happy thought. No need to change anything, just observe with kindness. Creating new neural pathways. Just as a cat naturally finds the most efficient path to its destination, our minds can develop new, more supportive thinking patterns. The key is persistence with gentleness. Emma, a writer who transformed her relationship with creative blocks, shares her experience. Emma: I used to berate myself whenever I got stuck. Now I treat these moments like a cat treating a closed door, with patience and the quiet certainty that another way through will appear. This shift from frustration to curious waiting has actually made me more productive. Consider this daily practice for nurturing new thought patterns. Morning mindset. Moment. 1. Begin your day by setting a gentle intention. 2. Choose one supportive thought to carry with you. 3. Write it down where you'll see it regularly. 4. Notice opportunities to practice this new thinking. 5. Celebrate small moments of shift and change. The power of mental flexibility. Think of how a cat can shift from intense focus to complete relaxation in moments. This natural flexibility is available to our minds as well, though we often need to cultivate it consciously. Embracing mental flexibility. David, a former perfectionist who now teaches mindfulness, shares this insight. David: I used to think in absolutes. Everything was either perfect or worthless. Learning to embrace the maybe space between extremes changed my life. Now I can hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, like a cat that's both cautious and curious about a new situation. The practice of perspective shifting. Try this gentle exercise in flexibility. 1. Think of a current challenge in your life. 2. Notice your immediate thoughts about it. 3. Ask yourself with kindness: what might another person see here? How might this look in a year's time? What opportunity might be hidden in this difficulty? 4. Hold these different viewpoints lightly, like a cat testing different paths forward. This isn't about forcing positivity or dismissing genuine concerns. Rather, it's about expanding our mental workspace to include more possibilities and perspectives. The heart-mind connection. Our thoughts and emotions are intimately linked, like a cat's purr that both expresses and creates contentment. Understanding this connection helps us work more skillfully with both. Marina, a therapist specializing in anxiety, explains, when we change our thoughts, we change how we feel. And when we change how we feel, we naturally think differently. Understanding this cycle helps us enter it at either point. Sometimes it's easier to shift a feeling through movement or breath, other times to begin with adjusting our thoughts. Practical integration. Here's a compassionate approach to working with difficult thought patterns. The pause and breathe practice. When challenging thoughts arise, try this. Take a gentle breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Name the thought pattern. Worry is visiting. Remind yourself, thoughts are like weather, they pass. The reframe with kindness practice. Rather than fighting negative thoughts, try this gentle shift. Notice the difficult thought. Ask yourself, how would I comfort a friend thinking this? Offer yourself the same compassionate perspective. Look for a small step forward from this kinder view. Daily integration. Living with a flexible mind. Like a cat that adjusts its movements to navigate different surfaces, we can learn to adapt our thinking to serve different situations. The key is making this flexibility a natural part of daily life, rather than just an occasional practice. Morning mind setting. Start your day with what I call gentle orientation. Take a quiet moment before the day begins and ask yourself, what mental state would best serve today's challenges? What perspective might help me show up fully? How can I hold my plans lightly while staying committed to what matters? Rachel, a mother of 3 who runs her own business, shares how this practice transformed her mornings. Rachel, VO. Instead of jumping into problem-solving mode, I take 5 minutes to set my mental compass. It's like choosing which glasses to wear. I can consciously select the most helpful way of seeing my day. Mindset check-ins. Throughout your day, practice brief moments of mindset awareness. Lisa, an emergency room nurse, uses what she calls 3-breath resets. Between patients, I take 3 conscious breaths. First breath, notice my current mental state. Second breath, release any stuck thoughts or tension. Third breath, choose my next perspective with intention. This tiny practice helps me stay flexible and present, even during intense situations. Working with mental challenges. Even as we develop more flexible thinking, we'll encounter difficult moments. The key is meeting these challenges with compassion rather than criticism. When thoughts become overwhelming, if you find yourself caught in spiraling thoughts, remember this gentle approach. 1. Recognition and permission. Acknowledge what's happening. My mind is very busy right now. Give yourself permission to feel overwhelmed. Remember, you are not your thoughts. 2. Grounding and presence. Feel your physical connection to your surroundings. Notice 5 things you can see. Listen for 4 things you can hear. Find 3 things you can touch. Notice 2 things you can smell. Observe 1 thing you can taste. Like guiding a kitten back to its bed, slowly bring your attention to the present. Focus on one small, manageable aspect of your experience. Take 1 tiny step forward, even if it's just making a cup of tea. Celebrating progress. Remember to acknowledge your growth with the same delight you might take in watching a cat master a new skill. Elena, a recovering perfectionist, keeps what she calls a victory journal. I write down moments when I catch myself thinking differently, when I respond with flexibility instead of rigidity, when I find humor in a situation that would have frustrated me before, when I can hold contradicting ideas without needing to choose between them. These small celebrations help reinforce new mental pathways. Looking ahead. As we prepare to explore emotions and affect in our next chapter, notice how your thoughts and mindset influence your emotional landscape. Just as a cat's posture reflects its mental state, our thoughts and emotions exist in constant dialogue. Remember, like our feline friends who approach each moment fresh, without being bound by past experiences, we too can develop mental flexibility and resilience. The key isn't in forcing change, but in cultivating awareness and choosing our responses with gentle intention. Your mind is not your enemy, but your ally in creating a rich and meaningful life. As you continue this exploration, trust that each moment of awareness, each gentle shift in perspective, contributes to your growing capacity for flexible, compassionate thinking. You don't need to transform your entire mental landscape overnight. Like a cat learning to trust, allow change to unfold at its natural pace. Celebrate small shifts, be patient with old patterns, and trust in your innate capacity for growth and